time.
Also today, we learned the president symbolically signed up for Obamacare, something he doesn't need and is yet still paying for. Must be nice. Mark, not everyone can afford symbolism, and I think Democrats need to admit this is a real problem for them in 2014.
Are there Democrats who aren't already admitting that?
I've heard some.
Some of my best friends are Democrats, and I haven't met one yet that isn't in denial that this is bad. The website, bad. The sign-up's bad. The delays, bad. But the truth is we're going to turn a corner, and things are going to be fine.
Nancy Pelosi says it's going to be a plus. We'll see.
I don't know about that.
In the Crossfire tonight, Neera Tanden, who helped craft President Obama's health care plan, and CNN political commentator Will Cain. Mark, as our guest host, I will give you the first question.
Good, and I get to go right to Will Cain. Will,
bring it.
I think you guys are overstating just a bit how bad things are. Over the last weekend, we've seen sign-ups, we've seen young people begin to sign up, we've seen millions of people access the site, and we've seen fewer glitches. What are you going to do when this thing actually starts working?
Okay, you think we've overstated. I don't think we've stated it far enough, so I'm going to give you this, Mark. You said in 2014 that you're going to turn the corner. What I'm going to accuse you of is what you've been talking about Republicans being accused of for the past several years, wishful thinking. You said we've hoped for Obamacare's failure. You're now on the side of hope and wishfulness. What you'll see in 2014, here's your overstatement, is the effective nationalization of the healthcare industry. To some extent, what I'm saying is anticlimactic. You've got the government dictating the prices of healthcare, the coverage. And in 2014, what we're going to see is the full-on nationalization of it. And the mechanism, and I'm going to let you rebut what you think I know is absurd, the mechanism is you're going to see the bailout of the insurance industry, because Obamacare has now set up a system where insurance companies can no longer exist in this environment.
That's a compelling argument. It's just not true. The thing you're calling hope, the thing you're calling wishful thinking is I'm calling data. Right? You know, there are people who are actually logging into the website and accessing it. There are millions of people signing up where before there were not. It's just a fact. Just this weekend, we saw 1.2 million people signing up. Doesn't that mean that we're turning a corner?
But Neera, we are halfway through this enrollment period. We're past the rocky rollout. Now we're talking about implementing this.
Right.
Does something in this law need to be changed for it to work more effectively?
So we actually are seeing a rapid increase in enrollment. So we have 500,000 people on the exchange in December. If you actually track what happened in Massachusetts, when Massachusetts passed its law under Mitt Romney, we're way ahead of the signups that Massachusetts had at this same time. So I'm actually excited about the chance of actually talking about all these people who have insurance. And the fact is, the Republicans in the next election are going to be talking about taking away people's health insurance. We already have 4 million people signed up through the Affordable Care Act, through Medicaid, through the exchanges, getting private health insurance and the Children's Health Insurance Program. So we're going to have something we haven't had in years, which is Republicans talk about repeal as actually taking away benefits from people. And I think that'll be a good debate for us to have.
Neera, you and Mark have now both used the term sign-ups, and you've touted the number of sign-ups over the past month and over the last several days. It's a curious term you keep using, sign-ups.
Enrolled.
Obamacare's ultimate goal... Okay, fine, enrolled. We'll use your term. The Obamacare's ultimate goal is to deliver health insurance to Americans, and ultimately beyond that, to deliver health care to Americans. If it's true, what you say, that hundreds of thousands of Americans have signed up. By the way, your goal was 7 million. You've got a month or two left to get to that number.
4 months. We have 4 months to get to that number.
And you are way behind. But again, sign-ups. That doesn't mean people sent in checks. That means they selected a plan at most. It doesn't mean they've actually been in communication with an insurance company who are receiving false data. You guys are using a unique term, sign-ups, to paint what you think is a rosy picture. If that were true, if the picture you're both painting is true, President Obama wouldn't be delaying the deadlines day after day after day.
Okay, let's talk about the delay of the deadlines. The delay today is just saying, just like we say for every other program, if you're in line tonight, you'll get health care insurance. We're not going to stop you at midnight. If you're processing your claim, we're going to do this. This is like people trying to get health insurance. We should reward them.
December 1st, went to December 15th, now it was December 23rd, and now it's moved to December 24th. Why have you had to move it 3 times?
All designed to get people covered for health insurance. That's exactly what this is all about. I don't know why it's a negative to you. I guess what I'm saying is we have 500,000 people who have health insurance. As a conservative, I wish you'd applaud that instead of trying to ensure that people lose their health insurance.
I appreciate you say you have 500,000 people have signed up. What I see is a net negative. I'm sorry, I see a net negative of 4 million. You kicked 5 million plus off of their plans.
That's absolutely
false.
Now
you have to make up that ground.
That's absolutely false. 5 million people weren't kicked off their plans. There's 500,000 people. If you look at the data, 500,000 people who have actually who will not have a better plan. We're seeing now data that shows that people who were getting kicked off their plan have better plans on the exchange. We're seeing stories every day.
5 million people didn't get kicked off their plans?
No, they've lost their coverage, and they have a better plan where they pay less.
So
and
they lost their coverage is what we call it when they get kicked off their plans.
You just saying the same thing here. You're saying they're off the plans, but onto a new plan.
They have a better plan in the exchange. The big problem we had is that healthcare.gov didn't work, so people couldn't see their better options. Now people are seeing, and you have story after story about people who are saving thousands of dollars. That's something you should celebrate instead of trying to rip that healthcare out of their hands.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Well, if the numbers are clearly increasing, isn't that a sign that we're turning a corner? If more people are enrolling or signing up or whatever language you use, isn't that a signpost of success?
Guys, I'm sorry, but you seem to be living in a dreamland. I assume it's driven by wishfulness, but SE started out this program. SE started out this program. 63% of Americans think that their health care costs are going to go up. 42% think Obamacare is going to make them worse off in their lives. And you point to a few 100,000 people who've clicked on a website, not sent in payment, not received insurance.
It feels like an alternate reality. It really does.
Okay.
And let's look at some more numbers. We talked about that number. 60% of women not into this bill. That's up from 54 in November. Despite the president's push to moms just last week, 64% of men oppose this law. In California, you only have 20% of the young people signed up. You need between 30 and 40. In Kentucky, it's the same.
25% is the perfect number. That's what the target is.
It's not the perfect number. You need 2.7 million young, healthy people to sign up to make this law affordable. You are nowhere close.
Let me pivot a bit, because, Will, I know one of the things you all have offered, and by you all I mean Republicans, is critique and not a lot of solution. One solution that's been offered is to open this up to the free market. The challenge of opening up to the free market is that things like pre-existing conditions may not get covered for people, that these efficiencies may not work out for the most vulnerable people. How do you reconcile that?
The solutions question is a great one, and you and I have had this debate before, Mark. The problem is we're pulling in opposite directions. Nir and I pull in opposite directions of what we think ultimately delivers the best health care for Americans. I believe a free market does, because what you can do is actually what President Obama has chosen to do in the last couple days, and that is allow people to buy catastrophic insurance plans. That is insurance plans that allow you, if you get hit by a bus or you get cancer, to have coverage. And everything else, from knee surgeries to elbow surgeries to you get an infection, you buy with a price mechanism and competitive nature of the regular free market.
What about the pre-existing condition? What about the person who, because of market efficiencies, can't get their pre-existing condition covered? What happens to them?
Pre-existing conditions is a tough conundrum, because they cannot live in the same environment with the definition of insurance. And eventually we have to get to what is the definition of insurance. It is designed to mitigate something that has not yet happened. Pre-existing conditions have already happened. What you're talking about really is just delivering free health care to those people.
I have a photo I want to show you guys before we go to break. We have seen some very desperate and silly, and I think sometimes even offensive, attempts to sell Obamacare around the country. You have those hosurance and brosurance ads out of Colorado. You've got Democrats leaving these brochures out at gay nightclubs. We just had an ad marketing Obamacare to gay consumers. What I don't understand is, if this is so great, why isn't it selling itself? Why do we see these absolutely ludicrous and desperate attempts at reaching every single person in every corner of the world to try and get onto this program?
I don't know. SE Cup, you know, it looks like apples are pretty good. Apple still spends $50 million to $100 million selling them. You sell things to people so that they understand what they're getting. That's why the insurers are spending. Yes, right now is the time that you get coverage. That's why insurers are actually spending tens of millions of dollars trying to get people covered, because they actually know that this will work, that there is a market out there. If there was no market, they wouldn't spend the money. But they know there's a market. They know there's a demand. People want health insurance. There's actually, these premiums are coming in lower. And the fact is that these plans are actually working because there's a demand for them. You know what I think is fascinating? We have the Affordable Care Act is a market, right? People get subsidies, and then they can go on the exchange and choose the health insurance they want. That's precisely why Governor Romney and the Heritage Foundation supported these plans in Massachusetts, and that's why I think it's interesting. That's not true.
Mandates the prices, the coverage, every aspect of it. In the end, you guys have compared yourself to Steve Jobs and Apple so many times it should be embarrassing. You must recognize you have a problem. That's the only way you're ever going to fix it.
Yes,
okay.
That's what it was.
I am confident that the Democrats are going to have a tough time next year with this, but Republicans have some problems too. Next, I want to ask my friend Will Kane, conservative to conservative, how can we avoid some of the pitfalls ahead?
Welcome back. In the Crossfire tonight, Neera Tanden and Will Cain. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi assured reporters today that the Affordable Care Act would not be a political problem in the next few months. In reality, it's unlikely that Obamacare will be a plus for Democrats anytime soon. But eventually, people are going to stop worrying about websites and start focusing on economic issues like Washington's failure to raise the minimum wage or extend unemployment benefits. And that's where Republicans will find themselves back in the same dangerous hole and the target of ads like this.
So to the 1.3 million Americans losing benefits, Merry Christmas from the GOP. It's wrong to leave more than 1 million Americans behind.
If Republicans remain tone deaf to America's working people, then Nancy Pelosi is right. Democrats have nothing to worry about. Well, I know you disagree with everything I just said, but at least you can concede that Republicans are overplaying their hand by ignoring these economic issues and just assuming Obamacare is going to save the day for them.
I thought Republicans have been talking about the economic issues of our country for the past 3-5 years, ever since the recession of 2008 and through Obama's tenure. We've been talking about it for,
Let me be more specific, because talking about economic issues by cutting taxes for the wealthy is not exactly what I mean. I'm talking about the idea of raising a federal minimum wage, creating a living wage for people, and I'm talking about the idea of extending unemployment benefits, two things that are on the table right now.
Let's be honest. These are not economic solutions. These are not even economic arguments you want to have. The truth is, everyone knows. You want to dismiss with an economic argument quickly. If you raise the price of something, you get less of it. You raise the price of this phone, you sell less of them. You raise the price of labor, you get less of it. That's your minimum wage argument. The truth is, this is a political argument you want to pivot to talking not about Obamacare, but accusing Republicans of hating poor people.
And that, sir, is why I'm saying Democrats have nothing to worry about in 2014. No, I thought you guys would have learned that lesson before. The majority of Americans want these increases. The majority of even the Tea Party, the extreme wing of the Republican Party, wants this.
Why are Republicans getting blamed for this unemployment insurance? Democrats passed this law. The president signed the law. Why are Republicans in the crosshairs over that?
Because there's so much. Oh, well, there seems to be Republican opposition to this.
Yeah, they opposed putting it in the budget agreement. That's why the Republicans are being blamed for it.
Democrats made it happen. They needed Democrat votes to pass it. The president signed it into law. Yeah, but Paul, why isn't it a pox on both their houses?
Because the Democrats pushed for it in the budget negotiations.
Because Democrats are nicer people.
Budget negotiations? No, it's Paul Ryan. No, Paul Ryan opposed it.
Since you brought it up.
Paul Ryan opposed it. The House Republican leadership opposed putting it in the budget deal. That's why they're being blamed for it.
Income inequality is a serious issue, and I'm glad the president's finally addressing it. He virtually ignored it for 4 years, and the income inequality gap has widened under this president, but it doesn't bring people to the polls. Are you telling me Democrats are going to run on raising the minimum wage? That's the big idea?
Absolutely. The reason why the president...
I hope you're right.
You know, what's fascinating
That'll
to
work in
me
Arkansas.
is that, absolutely, you know, Republicans, 70% of Republicans nationally support it, 70% support it in Arkansas, in Kentucky. Look at the state polls on this. There's economic populism flowing in those southern states and those conservative districts, and it's actually working against Republicans. That's why Allison Grimes is campaigning on it. Michelle Nunn is
Allison Grimes is going to win?
But she's winning. She's doing very well. She's right now even in the polls, isn't she?
She's not going to win, Neera. Come on.
Look, I think you should take note of someone who's even in the polls against the minority leader in the Senate.
I thought
the point has a lot of money.
The point is to win, right? You guys want to win in 2014. You want to keep the Senate, maybe pick up some House seats?
My overall point is that this is a very popular issue amongst Republicans. And I'd say to your arguments about the minimum wage, economic data after economic data shows that when we raise wages, people can buy and consume more. It's a simple concept. It's called demand. It's a simple concept called demand, so people have more money to actually purchase. And we've looked at states that have raised the minimum wage. Their unemployment has gone down because people can buy some products.
The simple rebuttal, Neera, is why don't you raise the minimum wage to $50 an hour then?
Because we're just looking at data points of what works. So let's start with 10. See if that works.
See,
and that's why I think
this is a way, Mark.
There is a point of diminishing returns, but hold on, Will, you haven't answered the initial question, right? Which was, if this is the popular consensus of everyday American people on both sides of the aisle, will Republicans lose ground in 2014 by not taking the populist position?
No, I'll answer your political question and then Neera's economic question. But the question of, well, not this will work politically, I agree with SC. If you guys have decided you want to adopt the Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, Elizabeth Warren, senator of Massachusetts, if Massachusetts and New York City are your model for national politics, I wish you luck, my friend.
In an off year, great luck
with to your economic point.
Neither one of them are actually campaigning on a minimum wage. That's
exactly.
Like
to the economic point you bring up. In the end, I asked you, do you want to raise minimum wage to $50 an hour? You said data points, and there's a there's a point of diminishing return.
$10.
Let me just suggest this. There's a thread that ties all of our conversations tonight, from Obamacare to the minimum wage to inequality. It's that you want the American people, and me and Essie at this table, to grant you the power, to give you, to wane down to your arrogance, that you know the right price of labor. You know how much people should make in inequality. And after we've watched you for the last 3 years mess up the healthcare market by dictating prices and coverage, you want us to do it on the heels of that.
You know what I want to, my only response to this is, we have a growing income inequality. We have declining mobility. Maybe your answer is let everything just be as it is. But I think Americans want solutions, and a simple solution is a federal minimum wage to ensure that there's some fairness. If you work hard, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be resigned to poverty. That, I thought, was a conservative...
Well, do you believe that there is no room economically for a federal minimum wage increase? None at all. Forget the $10 mark. Are you saying that it doesn't make any economic sense to raise the federal minimum wage?
I am absolutely libertarian on minimum wage. I think markets should dictate the price of labor like they have efficiently done for every other aspect of our society.
Federal wage makes no sense because cost of living changes from area to area, from region to region. Making $10 an hour in New York is different than making $10 an hour in Topeka. But I can't let you go, Will, without asking you this question, because we talked about it earlier. I want to talk about the GOP, and I think we do have a real problem. Earlier this year, Chris Christie seemed to scold Rand Paul in a speech he gave in Boston. He basically said, we're not a debating society. We've got to win elections. I think that is the GOP debate of the next year. Are we for principles and purity, or are we for winning elections? Which do you think is going to win out?
You know, William F. Buckley once said the goal in every election is to vote for the most conservative candidate available to you. So the answer, Essie, has to be both. And you and I have talked about this offset. I've heard you talk about it on air. Mike Lee put this perfectly when he said our goal should not be to identify heretics in our party. Our goal should be to identify converts. At the end of this, Mark will probably agree with me on everything, and Neera a few things.
Nice.
Well, if you take that approach, though, right? If you take that approach, don't you end up with a GOP that simply ignores the economic issue that we just talked about? That decides. Do you know what I mean? I'm worried that ultimately the GOP won't take the right position on this.
Mark, the goal of the GOP on economics is to find yourself on the most tried and true mechanism of overall growth for everyone in society, and that is to embrace the concept of free markets, not to enable the bureaucrats and politicians who know better the price of labor or exactly how much everyone should make, but to give it to, again, the one mechanism that has lifted human beings from poverty to wealth in society, in history, and that is capitalism.
Right,
I'm so excited that you have that position. 2014 is going to be awesome.
The same arguments were used to oppose the New Deal, which you clearly didn't support because you don't support a federal minimum wage. But I think the argument is to get let's just have a balanced approach to these things.
All right, stay here. Next, the final question for both of our guests. We also want you at home to weigh in on today's fireback question. Do you think Obamacare will be the biggest issue of the 2014 midterm elections? Tweet yes or no using hashtag Crossfire. We'll have the results after the break. We're back with Neera Tanden and Will Cain. Now it's time for the final question. Neera, I know you're optimistic that immigration reform can happen this year. And the president sounded bullish on it as well. Are Democrats willing to accept an immigration reform that does not include a pathway to citizenship?
No, and I don't think they should. I hope that we'll have a bill on the House floor during the Republican primaries. After the Republican primaries, seems like people are more interested in the House Republican caucus and taking that up after the primaries. But I hope, there'll be a real conference on this. Now, I think the path to citizenship is really popular, so it should be 60% of the American people, 55% to 60% of independents support it. So I think that should be in the final bill. And I think Republicans would do well to support a path to citizenship because that's what's really energizing Latino voters, and to expand their base, I think that would be something that they should be interested in.
Well, the president said he's not going to negotiate on this debt ceiling this time. He's just not going to do it. He said it's about old debt. Republicans are preparing the things they want to negotiate about. Did you guys learn a lesson from the last standoff?
You know, the lesson politically, and I don't want to get too involved in the nuts and bolts of polling and politics, but Republicans win on debt ceiling, and they did in 2011, and they lose on shutdowns, as they did in the fall of this year. Politically, that's how the public looks at it. You can fight over the debt ceiling. You cannot fight over a shutdown. I would tell you this as an economic issue. I do not think the debt ceiling should be used as leverage to extract what's probably going to end up being minimal demands. It has huge uncertainty and effects on markets worldwide, and I think, in the end, I am for economic growth. You know, that's what we have to be.
Some agreement there?
Do we all agree on that? We all agree on economic growth.
I agree on not negotiating.
What did I tell you in the last break? They'd agree with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's for economic growth.
Well, look, there's a whole host of other issues that President Obama laid out in his inaugural address. Climate change, gun control. What of any of that can actually get done? It seems like he's had a tough time with this.
Well, the president has a climate action plan, which he put out, which it works a lot through executive actions, and you know, I think people should see
necessarily.
Yes, I mean they have to actually. So I think there are gonna be rules coming out from the EPA, et cetera, and that's gonna be a management challenge for him, and I hope it's one that's successfully done.
Why can't he pass the Keystone Pipeline? Right? Am I right?
Yeah, you're right, but he won't be able, and Mark, he's not going to be able to do anything in 2014 beyond try as he can.
Not immigration, not Keystone, nothing.
Nothing, except through executive action, executive orders.
Yeah.
He has bungled it because of Obamacare. It has ruined his legislative capital, and he's going to spend the year trying to fix what is an unfixable problem, Obamacare.
Okay, thanks to Neera Tandon and Will Kane and my co-host tonight, Marc Lamont Hill. Go to Facebook or Twitter to weigh in on our fireback question. Do you think Obamacare will be the biggest issue of the 2014 midterm elections? Right now, 61%